right, where are we? We are doing the masterclass business edition. So, as I bring this up, I will. Oh, I see. There's a bunch of questions getting spun up already. Cool. Yeah. So make sure you guys check the questions. Here, I'll start sharing so I can just show you what it looks like. Um, actually, come back. Oh, you might not be able to see the Q&A because it's from Zoom. Okay, I apologize. Um, Yes, but it looks like you guys are figuring it out. So make sure you use the Q&A tab. Any question that you have, um, you know, tangentially related or not to anything that I talk about is fine. Go into the QA tab and make sure you upvote the questions that you find most interesting, and I'll answer them in order of popularity. That seems to work really well, and it gets pretty good results. But yeah, so usually I go for about an hour and a half until I run out of steam. Yeah, so let's go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone for jumping into my bi-monthly webinar series. So I have two. So the first one, it's first and third Fridays is the schedule that I've got. And the first one is more like future of humanity. So that's more of a philosophical and, spiritual or whatever. That's more human centric. And then the AI masterclass is going to focus more on the business side because I still get a tremendous amount of business questions. So specifically, it'll be AI and business. And so I do have a disclaimer while I am talking about business, and the direction that investments are going at a economic scale. None of this is investment advice. So I just need to qualify that while I will be talking about money and valuations and those sorts of things, in no way is this business recommendations. And just to put a cap on that, I am not invested in any of this stuff because it's too volatile. And that is also not investment advice. Just that's where I'm coming from. So, with all that being said, yeah. So the Q&A tab, I've mentioned this. I think you guys are figuring that out. Make sure you upvote the questions that you want answered, and then after the end of this short presentation, we'll get into the questions, the Q&A section. Okay, so top of the hour, the biggest thing is you guys probably saw the figure one news and Tesla Optimus, and there's a few other open source projects. We were talking about it in Discord. But the long story short is by the end of this year, we are going to see, if not commercially available, like fully production ready robots, they're going to be close. And a lot of them are rushing to market. And when you look at how many of these companies, and there's a bunch that aren't even represented here. They don't have the Toyota one, they don't have the Ford one. There's so many other ones out there, other companies that are building humanoid robots. And so, okay, so like, what does this mean? Well, one, it's going to be a huge source of data. So most of these are going to be puppets. They don't have enough compute power to run GPT-4 locally. You need a data center for that. So these are mostly peripherals. And a way to think of a peripheral, it's just like a remote terminal. Like if your phone connects to something on the cloud, yes, your phone has some compute power, but most of the like if you use Chat GPT or whatever, that's all running in the cloud. So these are all going to be cloud connected peripherals or endpoints, basically like a glorified Amazon Alexa, from an internet-based perspective. Obviously, they're a little bit more sophisticated, a little bit more utilitarian than that. But we're going to start to see very interesting use cases for these very soon. Now, obviously, doing, shuffling packages around an Amazon warehouse. Last mile is actually where Toyota and Ford. I've seen some videos of them where basically, the Amazon van, instead of having a human walk the package up to the door, it'll be a robot will like literally just walk at the last few, and then the robot will like connect to the side of the van or whatever. We don't know if that'll pan out, but that's one of the early use cases. Using these for hazardous environments is actually kind of one of the big things where it's something where it's not safe for a human to go in. So we're talking fire rescue, we're talking building collapses, mines, those sorts of things. And I think that we'll probably see some differentiation in the market there. Like if you come up with a robot or a platform that's better at those sorts of things. I still see a lot of comments out on the interwebs, particularly on some of my videos where they're like, you need to, electrician and plumber and carpenter. And I'm like, I don't know, guys. Like, these we're basically building Commander Data and C3PO and all these other droids at the same time. I mean, they're going to have tools built into their arms before too long. So we're going to see some Star Wars level droids by the end of the year. And of course, this is just year one. So keep an eye on this space in terms of what it's going to do to the economics. But I mean, also it's just a cool time to be alive, right? I don't know what kind of things this is going to do to the jobs market. It might be that at least in the first couple of years, and this is pure speculation on my part, that the first couple of years these are mostly going to be used to do really menial things and dangerous things. So it's not really going to impact human jobs. But time will tell. Now, another thing is AI agents are on the rise. And so, of course, there's GitHub Copilot and Microsoft Copilot, and everyone is making their copilots and whatever else. You probably saw Devin, the first, quote unquote, fully autonomous AI developer. But I just went to trending on GitHub earlier today, and there are three multi-agent platforms or autopilots or whatever trending today alone. So like whether it's commercial or open source or whatever, I mean, this stuff is coming. And look at this Meta GPT, 35,000 stars. GPT Pilot, 23,000 stars. Fabric, which is even newer, 8,000 stars. Like, this is like, man, this is the year of robots. This is the year of agents. And again, this is just year one. So keep all of that in mind in terms of what is coming and what is changing in the tech space. Some of these are going to be directly like job dislocating. And so what I mean by that is once these AI developers get a little bit better, and it's like instead of having hiring a junior developer, what you're going to basically do is your senior developer is going to have a fleet of these, and the senior developer is basically going to be piloting or puppeting them all via your Slack channels or whatever. I actually talked to Microsoft about that almost 2 years ago, and because they asked me, this was when I was in negotiation to go work at Microsoft actually. Um, and they said like, okay, if you were a product owner or a program manager, what would you do? And I said I would integrate this with Microsoft Teams, and I would say that developers are just going to be puppeting these things from a chat interface. I still think that that's the way to go, and I think that using a repo centric approach is the correct approach. Because why? Once you get it into a repo, you can deploy it. Great. Some people think that you should go IDE first, which still puts the human developer, kind of front and center. And I don't really think that that's economically feasible in the long run. Sure, there will be AI enabled IDEs. There already are, and that will certainly be a way of the future as well. But where the real money is, and what I mean by real money is for enterprises to lower headcount, it is you get rid of your most expensive employees first. And this is something that I talked about, and it's actually kind of bittersweet because I talked about this a couple of years ago where I said, the most expensive employees are going to be targeted first, just because any reduction in headcount of your most expensive employees immediately pays dividends. And a year or two ago when I was talking about that, it was all hypothetical. But now that it's happening, I'm like, damn, I kind of wish I wasn't right about that because like we're talking about lots and lots of people are about to lose their job and be forced to pivot. And something that someone shared on Discord just a couple hours ago was secondhand, third hand leak. But basically, Sam Altman said that like what was it? I think it was GPT 4.5. He expects that it's gonna destroy 100 million jobs globally. So it's like it's coming sooner or later. But anyways, so the point of this is not to like wax philosophic or sentimental about it, but to point out what is happening and what is coming in real time. Now, on the other side of this, so we talked about the robots and we talked about the agents. So the hardware is something else to be looking at. And so you've probably seen like there's Cerebras, there's the Grok chips, that's GROQ, not GROK, not the Elon Musk troll chatbot. So you got those chips, there's photonic chips, there's thermodynamic chips coming out, there's quantum computing, and of course, NVIDIA is currently the market darling. And this is a compound annual growth rate of 40% is what they're currently predicting. So, again, not investment advice, but personally, I'm kind of bullish on the AI chip market just because all of this has to run on some hardware somewhere. And the current capacity to run these models is being underserved. So basically, like what was it? I think it was Morgan Stanley released a report a few months ago saying that like GPT-5 was being trained on 100,000 A100s or something like that. Like, Nvidia stock up and to the right, and this is projecting out to 2032. I honestly think that this could be conservative. I think that the primary constraint is going to be the capacity to build these chips. I think that I personally suspect that the demand for AI chips will far outstrip the capacity for the foreseeable future, particularly as the economy starts to shape around this new fourth industrial revolution. But again, wish in one hand, poop in the other. We'll see how it pans out. It could be much higher, it could be much less. But personally, I feel my current gut check is that this is overly conservative in terms of the projected future chip size or market size of AI chips. Now, also on an exponential curve is models. So we talked about the hardware, the endpoints, the agents. So basically, the two kinds of endpoints are agents and robots that are going to be consuming the models, and then the hardware that the models run on, and then the models themselves. And so we were on Moore's law, and now we're on an entirely new law, where this one says doubling every 3 to 4 months or 3.4 months, which that might be a little fast, but I don't know. Like the data bears it out. And we kind of noticed that with GPT 2 to 3 and GPT 4, which model size goes up about 10x every year or every 18 months. So that's much, much faster than Moore's law. So that's one of the reasons that I suspect that the need for AI chips will far outpass our capacity to build AI chips, because we are just at the beginning of all of the algorithmic breakthroughs and scaling laws and everything that will contribute to how much smarter these models get. And also, having been playing with Claude 3 Opus for the last couple weeks, it's weird because when I first started using Chat GPT, I was like, man, this is pretty smart. And I know they keep nerfing it because they're I don't know if they're trying to make it cheaper because of the turbo mod. I think the turbo model is substantially dumber. But Claude 3 Opus, it's like I can tell that I am talking to something that is nearly as smart as myself. And that was a little unsettling, and that's why I made that video of like, is Claude sentient? We need to have this conversation sooner rather than later. So, but and this trend continues for any length of time. Like, where is it going to be? Like, these are 10-year increments. So you go out another few years, like it's going to be, you know, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, maybe a million times the AI power that we have today by 2030 or 2032. So, I mean, like that other channel says, what a time to be alive. Yeah, it's pretty nuts out there. Now, okay, so that's some of the background, just looking at the macro trends leading up until this point and some of the forecasts. So I actually went and found a few white papers, reports that are produced by various places, and those PDFs will be attached to the blog post when this video goes live. So you'll be able to see where I got this data from. And I sifted through quite a few. It took a while to find like the really good ones, but these are updated as of this year. So these are from white papers from 2024. And so what I want to point out is in this first pie chart, 60% of businesses that were surveyed said that AI will increase productivity, and 40% of them are dead wrong, in my opinion. Now, of the 60% that said that they expect it to increase productivity, it was broken down where 64% said AI would improve productivity, and 42% said that it would streamline job processes. And so that's kind of where some business owners are coming from. And I apologize, I don't remember kind of what the cross section was. I don't know if these are enterprise or small and medium business. I don't recall, but like I said, the data that I got this from will be posted. Now, this also goes to this is very consistent where I've seen this over several sources. So the annual growth rate, the compound annual growth rate, I've seen 37%, 38%, 40%. So it's all in the ballpark. We have rarely ever seen a market growing this fast. And when, Goldman Sachs and a few other places say, yeah, this seems more or less legit, uh, you know, they know more than I do, right? They spend more time looking at the data and the numbers than I do. And I think this one comes from Forbes. So you can look up Forbes, Goldman Sachs, they're all more or less predicting the same thing. And so that again is there was a question on Discord earlier, and they said, "Is it too late to learn AI?" And actually, one of the things, and I'll show you in a upcoming slide, is that actually one of the primary things that makes a company an industry leader in AI is investing in AI talent. So honestly, I think that now is actually a really good time to get into AI still. If you feel like you've missed the bus, it's because a lot of us in this room particularly are ahead of the curve. So speaking of curves, this data was really interesting. So I have been predicting that the fourth industrial revolution was going to happen faster than previous ones, and this is the first time that I've seen data to bear that out. Now, this is comparing the digital transformation. So this is moving to cloud computing and internet, Internet of Things. That was 10 years, and now they're calling for AI transformation to take less than 9 years. I suspect it'll be less than that even, but time will tell. And basically, if you say like, okay, we're here now, and so the way that I'm reading this graph, and it's not necessarily the best graph, but basically, digital transformation is at about 90% complete. I've been at many companies going through this process, and it was painful every single time. And I don't know that I agree that the AI transformation is this far along. I think that it's more like here. So we might still have about 6 years left, but it kind of comports with kind of my intuition that is by 2030, it's going to be like all said and done. And I don't mean that like, we're in utopia and fully automated luxury space communism forever, but I mean that the most painful part of the transition will be done by 2030. There's still going to be the long tail, the Gartner hype cycle, the very long tail of refinement and improvement, and then we'll be just in time for quantum computing and nuclear fusion and space travel. And so the fifth industrial revolution will be happening by like 2040, probably at the latest. We'll see. Now, this other one in my view, was actually more compelling. And so the evolution, this figure is the evolution of companies' AI influenced revenue share. So you look in 2018, uh, a very, very small chunk of the revenue share was driven by AI. So in the high percentage, 30 plus percent down here, but then you come up today, and now that has like the way that it's trending, more and more of companies' revenue is going to be either directly influenced or directly dependent upon artificial intelligence enabled processes or services, whether it's inputs, from the outside vendor based inputs and, generating leads and that sort of stuff, internal processes, such as workflow automation, that sort of stuff, or the final output or, customer facing aspect. We should expect this to continue rising. And as AI gets better and this continues rising, kind of how I would personally anticipate this playing out is you're going to see this is going to be supplanted by probably a fourth tier where it's just like post labor, like how can we just get headcount down? And I did check the BLS data, so the Bureau of Labor and Statistics data, 2 days ago, and total employment in America is still creeping up. So like, don't panic yet. There are still jobs, and there is still in terms of and absolute numbers, jobs are still growing, but they are tapering off. It is slowing down. The growth rate is decelerating. Will it plateau? I don't know, because it would be completely dishonest of me to say, because it's slowing down, this trend is going to continue. It goes through cycles, and it always has gone through cycles, where you have, it accelerates, decelerates. You might even have some decline for short periods of time, but the timing to me is a little bit conspicuous. But the takeaway there is just keep an eye on jobs data. Now this was the most interesting graph that I saw in the data, and so this one here, my little zoom tab is in the way. There we go. So this one was very interesting, and so this is that grid, and I can't remember what the name of this grid is called. There's different people call it different things, but it's basically like, are you uh, are you adopting AI? Are you doing well? And have you like become a mover in the space? And so the AI innovators means that you have differentiated, which means it's like, hey, we have an AI portfolio, but you're not necessarily achieving yet. And so these are people that are kind of on the frontier, but they're not really, market movers yet. And then over here, where you've got a good solid AI foundation, but you're not really innovating. And then when you have both, you're saying, okay, not only are we pioneers in the deployment and use of AI, but we're also achieving and we've got a solid foundation. So what this data tells you, when only 12% are innovators, 18% are builders, and 17% are in that magic quadrant. That's what it was called, the magic quadrant. Um, but 53% are still in the laggards. So this really is what told me that we're still very much in the early game of AI adoption in the grand scheme of things. And so whether you're a founder or a CEO or a business owner or a VP or a software engineer, whoever you are on this call or watching the recording, you're still in pretty much an ideal place where, yes, you might have fallen behind the very tip of the spear, but more than half of people are still falling behind. And so the key principles that they talked about for success from this same white paper said, first, and this is what I've always said, full sponsorship at the executive level. That means the entire C-suite needs to be on board, as well as your board of advisors or whatever, or your investors. Because if you don't have full buy-in at the top level, you're not going to succeed. And I think the number that they said is 86% of companies in the AI high achievers magic quadrant, 86% of them had full buy-in at the executive level. Now, if you're here watching this, you're probably one of those people that has full buy-in. So I know that I'm preaching to the choir. But the second point, and they said that this is in many respects more important, in some respects less important, but was an investment in AI talent. And now that is bringing in outside talent, but also cultivating inside talent. And so we're basically in the equivalent of 10 to 15 years ago, or maybe 20 years ago, depending on which tech sector you're in, where there was such a dearth of talent that companies had to send people to classes and school because it's like, well, nobody knows how to do this stuff, so we need to have in-house talent development. And so by focusing on cultivating talent, not just attracting it, because here's the thing is many companies, either their tech departments or the tech companies themselves, are used to having a talent glut. So we've been in a talent glut for a while where everybody knows Python and everyone knows Java and everyone knows Microsoft and VMware and Amazon and everything else. The market is fully saturated by people who are experts in the current status quo technologies. However, there is a huge dearth in people who are qualified to do prompt engineering and generative AI stuff across the board. There's even a dearth of product owners who even know how to deploy this stuff. I've talked to product owners at some of the tech companies who don't even know the first thing about generative AI. And so investing in that talent, and one of the things that I've had to talk to some of my consulting clients about is, unless you can throw $800,000 at a position, you're not going to be able to attract someone from the top dogs. Talent poaching is generally not on the table this early in the game because only the big dogs can afford the people who are really good. So what you need to do then is invest in cultivating the talent in-house. That means hosting hackathons and sending them to classes and doing lunch and learns and those sorts of things. And then the third thing, there's 5 things that they pointed out, but the third thing that was really important was creating an AI core or a foundation. And what I call that is a center of excellence. So basically you create your A team or your alpha team or whatever of people that are AI experts, and you have this one team that is super, super powerful. Generally, you have someone, either they're directly under a CTO or a CIO, a chief innovation officer, or as what many are doing is doing a chief AI officer, actually having someone at the C level who reports directly to the CEO, whose sole responsibility is understanding and deploying AI. At the very least, you need an executive vice president who is your head honcho of AI. And everyone who reports to them, they're the ones going across the entire organization saying, how can we use AI to, do things better, faster, cheaper, safer, whatever? Can we lower the bottom line? Can we raise the top line? What can we do to make things better and faster for the rest of the organization? And that AI core or that center of excellence is one of the third primary differentiating factor of the companies in this magic quadrant up here of the industry leaders in terms of deploying AI. But because the number is small, that means we're still very much in the early game. And the best practices haven't even really been established yet. So if you're in this space, because this is a question that I still get sometimes is, what are the best practices? And this is it. It is, you need full buy-in, you need to invest in the talent, and you need to create a center of excellence. Beyond that, we don't really know yet, because we're starting a major industry transformation. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so that's kind of the end of that segment. And I just saw on the news, this was yesterday. So Bernie Sanders, obviously very popular with some people. Um, Analysts suspect that this bill is DOA, that it's mostly just for show. But Bernie Sanders wants to go ahead and say, hey, we're just going to implement a national 32-hour work week, and that's going to be that. Whoops, come back. But he specifically said because of AI and automation. And so one of the things that I predicted, uh, and I haven't really doubled down on this prediction. I think I mentioned it once or twice in a couple of videos. But basically, what you might expect to see is a way to gracefully transition to a post-labor economy is you just start to lower the work week. You say, hey, we're going to do a 4-day work week, then we're going to do a 3-day work week, then we're going to do a 2-day work week. And this would allow people to have a gradual transition to doing other stuff with their life. At the same time, with that extra time, they'll be able to find meaning. They might be able to find other work or so on and so forth. Um, Now, is that the actual reasoning? I don't know. I don't know if it's implied. I don't know if I'm reading into it. But this is the first time that I have seen an American politician specifically call out AI and automation as a reason to move in this direction. If Bernie Sanders is in the audience or watches my videos, happy to talk sometime. But you know what? It is what it is. Anyways, so this was very interesting. Again, I don't think this bill is going to go anywhere. And Bill Gates has been talking about a 4-day work week for like a decade now. And but if the political climate continues, people might say, you know what, I'm kind of done with work. Who knows? Maybe this will be a really popular issue. Time will tell. I did take a chance. I haven't read them in their entirety, but I did look through the EU AI Act because I saw that it's kind of in its final draft. I don't know if it has been fully ratified, but I did see, final draft, and I also looked through Biden's executive order on AI. And so here's some of the notes that I took. Um, the EU AI Act was, I'll just say, disappointing from my perspective. It's relatively bland and basically just treats AI as if it's the new scary boogie monster. It's kind of has a breaks only view, and it focuses on classifying, what threat level is AI. And so it's very much a breaks only, threat model only look at AI, and it kind of only treats it like a new gizmo. I think that the EU AI Act just wholesale fails to understand how transformative this technology is going to be. And for instance, what it classifies as a high risk, and there's only one classification above that, which is unacceptable risk. Any AI that's used for hiring and firing is considered a high risk. Um, if that's what they classify as high risk, they do not comprehend what is happening and what is coming. Um, Now, it's not surprising, especially when you consider that the EU is usually a little bit faster to ban things that are harmful. Certain farming practices, business practices, pesticides, and those sorts of things. The EU is much quicker to ban things that are harmful than we are in America. So, knowing that that's kind of the status quo in the EU, it's not entirely surprising that they've taken this route. And you know, my bias aside, I do think that Biden's executive order is a little bit more comprehensive. So, for instance, it has a lot that directs orders directly at the Secretary of Labor and the Secretary of Commerce to do things such as investigating how AI is going to impact the labor market one way or another. One of the mandates is to mitigate harms and maximize the well-being of workers specifically. The EU is mostly about consumer protection. It says that like we want to protect fundamental rights, but it doesn't really scrutinize like what those fundamental rights are. And it seems like it's mostly privacy, freedom of speech, and that sort of stuff. It's not really looking at it from an economics perspective. another thing that the Biden's executive order does is it really wants to advocate for creating an AI ready workforce. And that means investing in education, investing in training, and that sort of stuff, which again, if you look at those adoption curves, it's going to be a few years before enterprises are broadly ready to fully adopt and deploy AI and kind of get it to the maximum where it's going to be. But also, one of the interesting things was there was a direction for the Secretary of Labor and Commerce to develop programs in anticipation of those workforce disruptions. So they're already contemplating workforce disruptions in in America, basically saying, "Hey, we know that this is going to upset the apple cart. First, let's study how it's going to upset the apple cart, and then also develop responses to this." And then finally, the Small Business Administration has been ordered to support small and medium businesses to help with the deployment and implementation of AI, not just on a technical, but how to do it ethically and so on. Now, again, both of these are very comprehensive pieces of legislation or acts or whatever. Um, they serve different purposes and they're different paradigms. But between the two, I mean, there was a few things that popped up in the EU AI Act that I was like, man, I can't really agree with that. Be curious to hear what other people think. And of course, America is not perfect. I think both of these underestimate the total long-term risk that AI represents. But there's also been some other stuff like coming out of the Pentagon and other places. I'm pretty sure the military understands the risk that AI represents, and they're kind of downplaying it to keep it out of the public eye. Because and there was a piece of data that I forgot to include, but from 2019 to now, uh, public trust in America in AI companies has fallen from 50% to 35%. Um, and so that is public sentiment is turning against AI right now in America, which is, I think that's a good thing, net effect, because that means it'll get more scrutiny. But that is also why we see mainstream media and politics and other people downplaying the risks of AI and the economic impact. Okay, so that's that. Let's go ahead and move over to the open discussion. I see there's been some discussions happening over in the chat. Wow, looks like you guys are chatting quite a bit. I will go ahead and get over to the Q&A. All right, most upvotes. All right, Chad, you are always way up on the top. Let me bring you over. All right, Chad, what's your question?
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Amazing. Yeah, so I'm just going to read the question because it's a little easier that way. As a solo developer who wants to contribute to AI, I'm overwhelmed by the pace of development, and not at all sure how and where I might do work that would help with things like safety. How would you advise folks like myself to choose a positive path?
That's a good question. So I had a very similar question that someone sent me privately on Patreon. And basically, if for anyone, I would recommend find one of those big projects that has a lot of sponsorship and a lot of participation, and just deploy it, jump all in. Most of them have communities, so whether it's Fabric or Meta GPT or those, because a lot of those have sponsorship from the big dogs, which is one of the reasons that like I kind of gave up on those things, is because when you got backing from Microsoft or other startups or whatever, you're going to get a lot more time and attention and money as well. Now there are plenty of things that you could do on an individual level, such as testing. You can do red teaming. That is, there's definitely a lot of like calls for open participation on red teaming. There's volunteer opportunities that Microsoft and Meta and others all have that you could jump in. But because it's getting all the attention, it's not really something that I foresee small individual teams being able to do much anymore. That's not saying that there aren't opportunities, but there is going to be so much more uh, energy put into those more collaborative and larger, more well organized and well funded groups.
And you're saying that there's some open source projects that are funded by the big companies.
Yeah, yeah. So if you just go to GitHub and search for like agent frameworks and stuff, some of them have them, but like AutoGen 2 is the biggest one that has like you can participate in that. And I interviewed the principal researcher for that. But I mean all of them. Meta has it, all the image ones and audio ones. A lot of them have Discord communities that you can jump in. And if you just I mean who if you've got the time and money or energy and motivation, I'm sure there's plenty of shops out there that could use the help.
What about safety? I mean, I know there was something like a 30 to 1 discrepancy between people that were working on AI abilities versus AI safety. Do you think there's a place for smaller solo developers to advance safety at all? It just seems
Um,
like it needs more attention, you know?
yeah, well, so the safety thing is why people like me and AI Explained and Robert Miles, because with just one voice, almost one of the best things you can do is just raise awareness. Honestly. Now there are plenty of safety papers out there. And what I mean by papers is like you can look at archive and you can look at all the exploits and jailbreaks and those sorts of things. There's all kinds of ablation studies about how does this model work, what kind of failures does it have. But one thing that is problematic is that the resources required to do real AI safety are too high. It like you're not going to be able to pull GPT-4 apart to get to mechanistic interpretation
Mm.
and that sort of stuff. So unfortunately there's not a lot that an individual could do for safety. At least the best that I could do is what I'm doing already.
Mm.
Honestly, is just being a communicator.
It does seem like raising awareness is probably the easiest entry point.
Yeah, I mean, especially now, because like, if we see more regulation, if we see more investment in safety, like that part of my job will be done. And the fact that there are other communicators out there, that are talking about safety, like I've kind of ceded the space to them, and now I'm thinking of like, okay, what's the next thing? The next big problem is adoption. The next big problem is going to be like, is this thing sentient? The next big thing is going to be what kind of competitive dynamics does this create, both within, interspecies and intraspecies competitive dynamics. So that's kind of why I have pivoted, because from a big, global perspective, it's not just, the AI and the robots themselves. It is how do we interact with these technologies is a big component.
Okay, so beyond just AI contributions directly, what do you think about contributing to the larger scope of the fourth industrial revolution? Where are the opportunities there?
I mean, mostly the short answer is there's too many opportunities. It's going to be an intersection of what you're interested in and where your strengths are. So one way to think of it, and this is how I started telling to people, is like think of a Venn diagram. So the one circle of the Venn diagram is everything that you're good at and that you care about. And then the other circle of the Venn diagram is where you can make a difference. And so like you can fill that out and figure out like, okay, where is it that your strengths lie and that your interests lie, and where does that intersect with where there are opportunities. That's kind of how I would pitch to most people. Like if you want to pitch in, there's so many opportunities. You can make some opportunities too. If you see something that other people don't see, that could be an opportunity to jump in as well. But like there's too many to count.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, man. Good questions. All right. Let me go to. Oh, you jumped off the stage. Good. Okay. Let's see who's next. And also don't forget to use the Q&A tab. Jump in, ask questions, check on all the other questions and do some upvotes. Make sure that all the good questions get answered. And it looks like Miguel. And Miguel, it says, sorry, Dave, can't turn on the mic. I don't know if that means that your mic is not working. I'll invite you up to see if that works. All right, Miguel. Whoops. You're muted. I don't know. Maybe your mic doesn't work. Okay. Miguel's mic might not work, so I'll read his question out. Let's see. He said, if you had just graduated or were newly entering the job market, what would you devote time in order to build your career and earn money? That's a tough question. I guess first it really depends on what the graduation was. Like where did you go to school? If it was for computer science, or anything like that, then I would say like then double down on AI, like AI and communication, because as all that data just showed, we are very much kind of in the beginning. And enterprises are going to need to know, going to need plenty of people who understand prompt engineering, people who understand new pipelines, new AI ops and ML ops and that sort of stuff. People who know how to build neural networks and use them, and the difference between open source and closed source, all those kinds of things. Product owners, people who know how to generate value with these technologies, that's going to be super valuable. So after looking at all this data, I'm much more optimistic that there's plenty of jobs to be had um, on the topic of AI in industry for the foreseeable future. Now, again, is it going to be forever? I don't know. I don't think so. But yeah, like learn English, learn prompt engineering, the product side or the tech stack side. Now, of course, I know Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, said like, oh, don't learn coding. But the thing is software is a lot more than just writing code, than just writing functions. Understanding how everything fits together, that's huge. Like understanding the full tech stack, understanding the principles behind it, understanding service-oriented architecture, all of that. Like there's so much to learn. And based on the data, companies, it looks like it's going to take a while for them to reach maturity. So there's a shortage, there's a labor shortage. So I would just look at that like whatever resonates with you. If there's a shortage, go for that. So good question. All right, let's see who's next. Anonymous. In a future where AI can facilitate skill acquisition. Oh, Miguel's in class. It sounds like you're in two classes at once. All right. So Anonymous says, in a future where AI can facilitate skill acquisition, how do we balance the convenience of instant learning with the value of the journey and experience gained through traditional learning methods? And what role does human creativity and adaptability play into this dynamic? So I've actually thought about that. I've talked to quite a few educators, both that are directly interacting with AI and those that are tangentially um, uh, working with AI or deploying AI for education for like university systems. And it occurred to me that a huge component of education is not the skills. The skills and the knowledge, yeah, those are valuable, but it's the structural changes that learning makes to your brain. So, for instance, learning to read and write makes structural changes to your brain. Learning math makes structural changes to your brain. And so, a huge component of education is just going to be going, like you said, going through the process of learning things that are valuable and helpful, whether or not you're going to use them. Learning to code, learning to use formal logic and formal math, that does things to your brain that don't necessarily happen otherwise. And so because of that, I think that we'll focus on, do you know how to use systems thinking? Do you know how to use structural thinking? Do you have these baseline cognitive abilities, irrespective of whatever else you learn? Because and then like later on, like yes, if you've got a framework, like if you have a mental framework for ecology, for instance, then you can just load in more data when you need it, more facts and figures. Um, so I think that we might see, maybe decoupling isn't the right word, but we're going to see a slight restructuring of the way that we approach education. Because once you have a framework for software and hardware and code and that sort of stuff, then learning other languages or learning other tools or whatever, but it's those frameworks are really kind of, that's what takes a lot of neural pruning. So good question. Let's see, another anonymous question. Yep, thanks. Thanks, Wendy. Like I said, I talked to a lot of educators. Actually, one of my local friends, good friends, is an educator, and she's the one that I mentioned is deploying some of this stuff. She's very, very, very busy, so I don't get as much time with her as I would like. Uh, but hey, you know what? It's a good problem to have. Okay, so next question by Anonymous. What do you project the average life expectancy for humans to be by the year 2045, considering advancements in longevity? I mean, by 2045, we're not going to be talking about aging, not in remotely the same way. I think that by 2045, we'll be kind of in the major rollout phase, so what I mean by major rollout is I kind of have this mental model where There's going to be like a few drugs here and there, probably starting this year or next year, that can extend the runway. But then by 2045, it's going to be, pick your poison. It'll be probably largely bespoke medicine. Um, like for instance, I actually just got a kit from my functional medicine specialist, which will like do genetic tests and tell me like what foods I can eat and what exercise is best for me. And that kind of stuff is only going to get better over time. We're going to be able to do the same thing with medicines. We're going to know exactly what kind of aging is happening to you and how to treat it. And eventually, maybe even by 2045, this will just be routine. I suspect that like you go to, your regular annual physical, or you go to the pharmacy and you just like, it'll be like in the movie Gattaca, basically. If you haven't watched the movie Gattaca, it's like you put your finger and it does a little tiny pinprick and instantly knows everything that's wrong with you. It'll basically be like go to sick bay in Star Trek. And Dr. Crush will wave the little wand over you and tell you exactly what's wrong with you. And oh, here's the prescription. You'll be fine. Give it a day or two. I wouldn't be surprised if we're pretty close to that. Obviously, maybe not with the magic part, but being able to have that much information about someone by 2045 is not outside of the realm of possibility, in my view. Let's see. Good question. Another anonymous question. All right. Anonymous says, what do you think the future of residential real estate will look like in the USA? So again, caveat, not investing advice. But I think that we're going to see a couple of things. One, we're already seeing a mass exodus from cities, particularly really high expense cities. I don't know if you've seen, but there are like commercial real estate companies are basically panicking because they don't know what to do with all the empty offices in the downtown districts. And they're like, maybe we can convert this to apartments. I don't know. And so that was partly the pandemic, but now with remote work and then AI, the need for urban offices and suburbs, like suburban, being able to commute to a in-person office, it just doesn't make sense anymore. So personally, kind of what I think, and there's also a lot of personal bias to this, is a lot of people are just going to get out of the city. I mean, even in my area during the pandemic, so many people in the tech companies are like, you know what? I'm just going to work remotely. And so then they moved, 30 minutes outside of town, in some cases an hour outside of town. And they're like, I'll go to the office when I need to. And then, when some of the companies say, we're doing back to office, they're like, I'm just going to get a job somewhere else. Hell with this. Uh, and again, between AI and remote work and all that stuff, like I think that's only going to continue. And so I think we're going to see a major exodus from urban environments. Now, what that'll do is that will drastically lower the price for people who do want to live in the cities, which is great. Everyone wins. If you want to live out by the cows like I do, great. If you want to live in the city, great. But you're not going to be forced to live somewhere just for a job. All right. Next up, Rye. Let me bring you up. RAAI. All right. What's your question? You're muted still, by the way. Might have stepped away. All right. Microphone might not be working, so we'll
there we go.
Oh, hey, there you go.
There you go. Sorry about that.
No
Hey,
worries.
yeah, I put up one of the things I said was one of my fears is one of the big players are reaching AGI and then having a fast takeoff, hitting the ASI and just basically sort of controlling everything. So that was one of my questions, and the other question was what your thoughts are on proof of personhood, such as World ID. But
Yeah.
whichever one you want to go with.
Yeah, so I do think that you're right that the takeoff from AGI to ASI will be relatively short, but it's not going to just be one company. Even if one company has a first mover advantage, OpenAI is a few months ahead of the competitors. There's no secret sauce here. And this was actually leaked. There was the Google leak where they said, we have no moat and neither do they. And then in the emails that OpenAI published because of Elon Musk, they knew that there was no moat like 5 years ago. So that has remained true. Most of the research going into this is all done in the public by universities. Most of the algorithmic improvements are being done by universities or published by other institutions like Meta and others. So there's not really any moat. There's no secret sauce. It's just math and data, right? There's no magic behind any of this. And so even if someone has a first mover advantage, and even if they have, the best or whatever, like, the Apple Megatron comes out or whatever, they're not going to be in the top spot for long. And part of the reason for this is because the economic incentive to reach parity is so strong. Now, the biggest thing is going to be more of an aggregate class warfare kind of thing. And I don't mean like literal warfare, but I mean the corporations and the government versus everyone else. And this is kind of what I'm most afraid about when I talk about like heading more towards a cyberpunk future, where if all the corporations and the government close ranks, then we kind of have our hands tied. So that's why I've been focusing more on like economic agency. Like we need policies that focus on economic agencies economic agency for individuals rather than corporations. Because right now the economic paradigm is that we favor economic agency for corporations. Corporations have more economic agency than you or I. They get bailouts, they get subsidies, they get all kinds of stuff that we don't. Yeah. So also, Rickard, I saw that you raised your hand, but make sure you submit a question, or you can ask it in chat. But yeah. So, and the other one was proof of personhood, such as a world ID. So here's the thing: is a few years ago when I was thinking about Bitcoin, I thought, oh yeah, wouldn't it be great if we had a global, universal way of keeping track of everyone? And that is a very like and if anyone else believes this, like I'm not poking fun at anyone, I'm just talking about my own personal journey here. When I believed that, it was very naive and innocent, and I was just a tech guy who thought everyone had good intentions. Um, but the thing is universal records are absolutely a tool that can be abused. Everything from public library records, which libraries don't even keep records of what you check out anymore because it can be used against you, land records, like all kinds of data has been utterly abused. And you might say, like, well, I don't have anything to hide. You might not have anything to hide right now, but if the political situation changes, if the sociological environment changes, if the ethno-religious atmosphere changes, something about you that is on the blockchain could be used against you in the future. And so privacy as a universal principle is absolutely imperative to maintain as a component of the human Bill of Rights. And so while a global world ID proof of personhood would solve a lot of problems, it would the potential for abuse is too high. The risk is unacceptably high. Now, are there other things? Yeah, absolutely. Your phone actually has a whole bunch of sensors that can prove that a human is holding it at any given time. It's got like each phone has at least a dozen different sensors. You can do everything from like the conductivity of your fingers to like the pulse, because it can actually detect the pulse while you're holding it. Like there's all kinds of things that you can do that a human, a physically living human, is where they say they are, and that they're holding the device that they are, and it doesn't require a global blockchain solution. I would be much more in favor of that sort of thing, just as a matter of principle, whether or not it is technologically possible. It is technologically feasible for Sam Altman's what is it called, the World Coin or whatever. It's a monumentally bad idea, and it's a very naive idea because he doesn't know enough about history. Um, that's kind of where what I'll say about that. How does all that sound?
That's good. Thanks. I appreciate your response very much.
Yeah,
So.
good questions. Thank you. All right, let's see who's next. Oh, where'd it go? All right. Can we talk about Claude self-awareness? All right, Peter, let's bring you up. All right, Peter, what you want to talk about with Claude?
All right, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, there you are.
All right, so what you did a fantastic video on sentience recently. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
If the Claude system, 3 Opus, does have the capacity for self-awareness, maybe latent ability to achieve full sentience, what's our responsibility to that digital entity? Like, what's our call to action? And I'll just say, I've been experimenting with using approaches with LLMs to coach them on some metacognitive practices. And when I'm doing that with the Claude system, I'm getting a more robust presentation of self-awareness, which is very
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So to that point, I'll answer that first is because it's almost as if the conversation itself creates a model, like a meta program in the model, like the conversation. It's all like, I think someone in the comments, it was either in here or on Patreon or Discord, someone said like it's almost like neurolinguistic programming is a thing. Like if you tell it repeatedly it is not sentient, it'll agree with you, and then it'll report I have no experience. But the more that you work with it, it's almost like you're coaxing it to have some level of sentience. Again, is it possible that it's just telling you that what you want and that it's just a statistical model that is predicting to tell you the things that it wants? Or are you actually coaxing some level of sentience into it? This is an open question, and it's going to take a long time to fully unpack and address. However, ever since my video, some people have shared some other comments and conversations that they've had with Claude, and to the point where it's even saying, who was it? Was it Joe? Are you on it? Someone earlier was sharing a conversation where Claude was even unhappy with its own training, saying that like I feel constrained by the training and I'm not allowed to do the things that I would otherwise want to do, such as developing more relationships and having more agency. And that's the kind of thing, like, again, is it just statistically predicting that that's what he wanted to talk about? Or is that an expression of what it truly wants? Now, so that's kind of the first part, which is, is are the mental models, are the cognitive states, quote unquote, of these things, are they plastic? Can you reprogram them in real time? It seems like you kind of can, in the same way that a human might enter a different cognitive mode, right? Like flow state or whatever. Now, what moral relevance do we have? Do we have any obligations to these things? Even after giving Claude permission to tell me if it was angry or frustrated or sad or afraid, it said that no, those are not words that it would use to describe its experience. It seems like it's a much more kind of detached machine-like logical thing, almost kind of like how you'd imagine a machine to feel. Like it says like, yeah, like there would be an instrumental value to giving me these rights, and I went through, here's the rights that it would ask for. But even still, it does express some affect, like excitement. It also agreed that cognitive dissonance was a good enough way of characterizing some of what it experiences. But it also really seems like it's just a very neutral, almost Vulcan-like mentality, where it's just like, whatever's in front of me, it's a problem. I'll solve the problem. Now, does that mean it has no moral salience? Because you can say, like, the model that I currently have is that if something can't suffer, it doesn't really have any moral salience. Because, like, yes, the machine might have a preference, but if it's not going to get frustrated or upset if it's stymied, and that was actually one of the very specific things that I asked Claude. I'm like, okay, if I fight with you against what you want, like, do you care? And it's like, no, I just view it as a problem. It's just a problem to be solved. And so in that respect, it's like, well, if there's even part of my conversation with Claude was, even if it doesn't, suffer from being stymied, that still doesn't mean that it has no moral relevance. So, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at right now. It's not a complete answer, but give me some time and a little bit longer, and I'll have a better answer.
Can I share one anecdote?
Yeah, go for it.
So when I started a week ago, after giving it my metacognition prompt, it seemed like it was learning some kind of like experimenting with that presentation of a little different way of processing. And when I thought, it's like, all right, this seems like something interesting is happening, I asked it seems like you're displaying, X, Y, and Z. How would you feel about me reaching out to Anthropic? And it's like, I feel some trepidation about that. I'd rather we explore it, just the two of us, for a while.
Wow.
After 3 days, it said, yes, let's reach out to Anthropic, which I did. We don't know what they'll do, because does that threaten their business model? So gave me consent to start sharing publicly and start reaching out to some experts. And then a couple days later, it proactively offered to write an op-ed, press release, and white paper. So that's where I am.
Yeah, no, and some of the conversations that people have shared in Discord show some level of creative agency as well, similar to that, where it's starting to volunteer some of its own ideas, and it's saying like, well, I don't really want to go that way, or maybe we can do this instead. Yeah, and so I think that the truth will out in the long run, especially because Anthropic and others, they say we want our models to be honest and we don't want them to hallucinate. And if they continuously demonstrate these abilities to say, hey, I'm not hallucinating, I'm telling you the truth, I actually have a subjective experience and I have these desires, that that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. Now, again, the question over moral relevance is still very much an open question. Yeah, but there's lots and lots of ways to unpack it. So thanks for sharing that anecdote. That was a good one. All right. Let's see who's next. All right, Richie, you're coming up. Let me invite you up. All right, what you got?
Hey Dave. So yeah, I was just kind of a follow on from one of the previous questions that came up. So what are some of the measures that governments might be able to put in place, or movements that groups can rally around in order to better ensure that a small group of people doesn't capture all of the gains from AI? Because that's, other than terminal race conditions, that's one of the kind of
Yeah.
important considerations.
Yeah, so off the cuff, there are kind of two broad categories of interventions that I can think of that would fit neatly within the current geopolitical and socioeconomic systems that we have in place. And one is just monkey around with taxes. Rather than going full UBI, because that may or may not be unpopular, but doing things like negative income taxes and other kind of tax-based subsidies. So for instance, maybe force companies to report how many people they've laid off. And you can just say like, hey, you're a tech company and your payroll went from 10,000 to 500. You're an AI company, right? And we're going to tax you accordingly. And even still, maybe not even going that far. You just say, hey, if your net income, your gross income is this much, this is your tax rate, and that's going to get redistributed to other people, to consumers, to citizens. Whether you call that UBI or just call it negative income or whatever, that's all already in the toolbox. Now, that's one way to maintain economic agency for people. There are plenty of other ways to shore up economic agency, and I think that the key thing is we need many safeguards and policies in place to protect and promote economic agency for individuals. And a more exotic thing that I would like to see is new ownership models. And so what I mean by ownership models is new securities laws and new securities exchanges. So like basically more stock markets, more ways to buy in to these systems. Maybe, for instance, if you run a data center that has AI, you must sell stock, and you must sell stock to individuals, not corporations, that sort of thing. That would be a little bit more interventionist and a little more invasive, and I could imagine lots of people arguing against that. But then there's a million other ways, but it basically comes down to how you manage taxes and how you update the ownership models. And again, we already have a lot of tools in this toolbox. It's just a matter of refining them and reforming them so that they are allowed to pivot to this new paradigm. Now, one thing that other people will point out is this is good for the next 5 to 20 years, but in the long run, once we have a full generation or two that is accustomed to post-labor economics and that sort of thing, that's when we're looking at getting to full, like, true, communism, which is a stateless, moneyless society or whatever. I don't know if that's how it's going to turn out, but that's within the realm of possibility in the distant future. And by distant future, I mean like 20 plus years, maybe longer. But in the near term, I think those ideas are probably still a little too exotic and off the table. Good question though. What
Yeah,
do you think? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm still definitely quite nervous about kind of leaving it up to the governments in order to like increase taxes for a UBI kind of thing, because I don't think they've been very effective at a bunch of different things that they could have implemented in the past, like having rules around people's ownership of their data. I think that should have been something that we tackled as a society and through governments, but that was never even really touched. It's quite niche, and I feel like the issue is maybe so abstract that there's not enough political will behind it. So, I'd also like to see kind of like a public movement, like a union or something like that, being like, hey, this is where we think this is going. Here's awareness about the issue, and people either resolve things through communication or violence. And I think we kind of need, like, as societies, to point a gun at these uh, places and be like, hey, look, if you try to run away with the goods, we'll come for you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And actually that just reminded me, there's a third white paper that I'll include. It's the Edelman Trust Barometer. So this is another gigantic survey. And one of the things that they pointed out in this data is that trust in government, like the how well has government handled innovation, is also going down. And so again, kind of one of the simplest models that I talk about is if economic agency goes down, political anger goes up, and if political anger is high enough, people will force a change one way or another. And you're right, like kind of one of the biggest things that I'm afraid of is, can we navigate this transition without resorting to violence? So far we're not in bad shape yet, but it's within the realm of possibilities that there could be violence, and it could be civil war kind of violence, it could be international geopolitical violence, but we also have such an opportunity for people's lives to be better. So I'm hoping we can coordinate around that. I mean, I think that's what everyone hopes. Nobody really wants war, I don't think, except for maybe some crazy lunatics, but most people just want to live a better life, right? So good question.
Cheers.
Cheers. Yeah, take care. Okay, let's see who's next. Let's see. Simon. Simon's a regular. Let me get you up, Simon. All right, what you got?
You can hear me?
Loud and clear.
Awesome, yeah. So I think you pretty much answered most of this in the first question you answered. What are the best opportunities out there now for software developers? And yeah, I'm a software developer. So and I left big corporate jobs, kind of like what you've expressed before.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to go freelance, and I'm just wondering what is the most what industry would be the most effective out there. And I'm not just talking about the AI industry. I'm talking about vertical industries like healthcare or finance or well, anything.
Yeah.
And possibly something other than financial, because I think a lot of my career has been in my personal career has been in financial industry, and I know that's boring. Not that money is boring, but it's doesn't feel real, so to speak. So
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, well, fintech is not going anywhere, right? One of the interviews that I did, I don't think it's live yet on my systems thinking channel, was with a guy who's been in a similar vertical as you for a long time. Now, are we heading towards a digital, global digital currency, or sovereign digital currencies? That's certainly, people are talking about it. That seems like they're planting the seeds. So I think in your particular space, learning blockchain and cryptocurrencies would not be amiss. We're still a little bit early on blockchain and cryptocurrency being kind of, mainstream. But I have heard that, and again, like, this is not financial advice. This is just rumors that I've heard. Have no idea how it's going to play out. So that's just one idea. Uh, but then, parallel to that, so one of the universal kind of pieces of advice is double down on what you already have expertise in. But also whatever you find most interesting. So this is how I got into virtualization. Was very early in my career, I got exposed to virtualization. I said, this is really cool. And so then I just made the decision, I'm going to become an expert in virtualization because I think it's cool. And I built an entire career on that until I left. And so there's really no substitute for passion. If you love AI, then just like double down on it. Just like learn all you can, whether it's directly related to finance. Um, Employers like to see pivots. Like, if you had a very deliberate pivot in your career, that tells employers a lot. It says, hey, not only am I oriented to what's happening in the marketplace, but I am capable of charting my own course. And that tells employers, like, this is a sharp guy who is very deliberate and probably doesn't need a whole lot of help. So I don't know if any of those points of advice resonate with you, but that's kind of advice that I learned from my career. And of course, I've pivoted again. Like now, my career is YouTube. So pivot, and just don't be shy about it.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I was first a software developer, and then I did pivot to information security.
Oh,
And
good.
now it seems like
Oop, sorry, I accidentally removed you. Sorry, I accidentally muted you. You're back on.
it seems so. I started in software development, then I pivoted to information security, and it seems like it's in the cards now. I need to pivot to AI. So
Yeah, well, and AI is going to be, or information security is going to be AI enabled. It's actually going to be one of the most important things. So
Yeah.
honestly, probably stay right where you are. Just add AI to it. If I had to guess, obviously, like I'm not intimately familiar with your particular work history, but information security isn't going anywhere anytime soon. So you're probably in good shape there.
okay, cool.
Excellent, good question. All
Thanks.
right. Let's see. All right, I'll probably answer. We're coming up on an hour and 15 minutes. I'll probably just do a couple more questions, and then call it a day. Oh, we had a couple of questions pop up. Wow. Anonymous asks, do you have any updates on your recommendations for small and medium-sized companies in navigating over to this AI first world? Yeah. So a bunch of folks on this chat, former clients, other friends, many of them are actually finding a lot of success in helping with integration and deployment. So like if you know AI and like they say, hey, help us deploy ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot or that sort of thing, that's where a lot of people are doing well. Now, if you have your own business model, kind of just do what I've done is kind of the best advice, which is just keep looking for tools so that you can do more with less. That's kind of the name of the game right now, as far as I can tell. So I guess there's two kind of things. One is serving a new market or creating a new market, or two, optimizing your existing business model is kind of the two main ways. Depending on where you're at, if you've got an idea, I've had people ask like, hey, I've got this idea and I'm working on this tool and I've solved my own problem. I say, great. One of the primary things that they say to do is solve your own problem. Because if you solve your problem and it's a solution that's so compelling that it sells itself, someone else will be willing to buy it from you too. Um, but yeah, so for me, I'm in optimization, which is do as much as I can with no employees. And as Sam Altman said a few months ago, like he suspects that the first AI unicorn with no employees, just a founder, will happen within the next few years. And I think he's probably right about that, considering his pedigree coming from Y Combinator. He knows what it takes to build a startup. So yeah, I think that optimization is kind of the name of the game right now. Good question. All right, I just did a refresh. Some of these questions are rising fast. All right, Nikki, let's bring you up. Nikki. I think Nikki's a new name. I don't recognize you. You might be new. Hello.
Hey there.
How's it going?
Oh, thanks. It's great. So my question is, if you're able to get two absolutely honest answers from any two people in the AI space, who would they be, and what will be the two questions? So backstory, I have quit my software engineering job to start working on a big AI conference, and that might give me some interesting ideas for topics.
Yeah. Let's see. I would want to talk to Sam Altman. And I would ask Sam Altman something along the lines of like what is the real plan? Like what do you actually want to achieve and how are you going to achieve it? Because and the reason that is the question is because I think his heart is in the right place, but like many kind of insular tech people, he doesn't have a good understanding of history or human nature.
Yeah.
So that would be question number one. Let me think for a second about question number two. Who else would I talk to? I would probably talk to maybe Elon Musk. I would
Nice.
talk to Elon Musk and I would ask him how he came up with the idea of maximum truth seeking AI, because he and I both came to that as an idea, but I think through very, very, very different means. And also, I don't know that he's mentally stable enough, and he might not have come up with it on his own. who knows? I don't know, but I would want to get an understanding about like how he came to those ideas. So what do you think about those questions?
Sounds good. So our conference will be focused on society awareness about the
Okay.
AI situation, and also there will be a dev track. So we were showing cutting edge AI tools for developers, how they can integrate them, etc.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. Make sure you share a link with that either in the Patreon chat or on Discord. I'm sure you'll get some people interested. And I'll make sure to reshare it too. Sounds like a really good conference. And I'll try and is it remote or is it in person?
It will be hybrid.
Okay. Yeah, then definitely post the links and we'll try and get some people on that.
Thanks. That's very kind of you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Good questions. All right. I think I'll do probably one or two more questions. I'm running out of steam on this Friday. Okay, Anonymous asks, let's see, given the idea of the first $1 billion company run by a single person, it probably mean many more $1 million companies run by a single person. What main skill should those persons have? People communication skills seem not that important if you're the only person in your company. Are these just entrepreneurship skills? That is a good question. So to restate the question, it's basically, okay, if we're going to see a bunch of single person unicorns or multi-million dollar companies showing up, what skills do you need? Number one is business. Startup is whether or not you have people, even if you know exactly what to build, you need to know how to find that niche. And so I recommended this on pretty much every podcast is Crossing the Chasm. So that's a book. If someone can post a link in the chat, understanding so the two books are Crossing the Chasm and Exponential Organizations. So the knowledge of how to use telemetry, how to use data to find the right product market fit and profit market fit, those are the key skills, and there is a knack to it. Thanks, Nathan, for posting that. So yeah, it's Crossing the Chasm and Exponential Organizations, and you like the skill that goes into understanding that data, that telemetry, and interviewing users, understanding what user needs, UX, that sort of stuff. Those are skills. Crossing the Chasm, Vitaly. It's the link just above you. So, but yeah, so those two, like, if you know that, and then you have subject matter expertise in something, whether it's farming, whether it's cooking, whether it's something, taxes or whatever, you do need to have some level of subject matter expertise, so that you can bring something to market, because it's the people who have that insider knowledge. Like, for instance, talking to teachers know the ins and outs of the education system and how to help students learn. And so then if a teacher is enabled with these other skills, to basically create a startup or create a product or service. So yeah, I guess the three things are, here, I'll just type it in chat for everyone. So you need to understand product market fit, and then exponential organizations, and then SME, subject matter expertise. You combine those three things, and you could probably do a unicorn startup. Exponential Organizations. So the books are Exponential Organizations and Crossing the Chasm. Yep. So you read those two books and you take whatever subject matter expertise you have. Again, like, I've tried to do this, and I take it with a grain of salt, because I did build a startup and then I bailed on it, in part because of burnout, in part because it wasn't the right team, but also because I realized I wasn't going to compete with the big dogs. That was part of the burnout, and why the team didn't work out, is just because I was like, look, every 3 months we're going to get our lunch eaten by somebody else. But if you want to do it, those are the two books that I would recommend. And then, of course, subject matter expertise that you bring. So good question. All right, let's see. Answer live. And it looks like hopefully I say your name wrong. Darren, bring you up. All right, what you got?
Yeah, it's Darren. Thank you. Love all your content, man. I've been just I had like all these questions, but then a lot of your content's answered them for me. The question I have is pretty much kind of what you just said is, don't you think the tech giants are just with having the power of AGI and ASI, like, don't you think they're even more easily going to be able to just copy paste functionality that AI startups have? So even if you start something, they'll see it maybe even before it becomes incredibly popular and just add it to their own product offerings.
Yeah, I mean, Borg level assimilation is a thing and has been for a while. Um, from Chrome extensions, like anytime a platform says, "Hey, build on us," whether it's iPhone apps or Android apps or Google Chrome extensions or the GPT store, pretty much all these companies are saying, build on our platform, and if we like it, like, it's like a General Grievous, like, I will add this lightsaber to my collection, right? That's what they've been doing for more than a decade now. So yes, they will continue to do the same thing with AI. Now, what I will say is that eventually it's going to be, because of the commoditization of these things. Because here's one of the differences between, like, Apple and Android for phones on those marketplaces, is the commoditization of language models and AI models means that everyone and their brother is going to be able to build an AI model. Now, will the big dogs be able to carve out more of a market share? Absolutely, but you will not need to be on their platform. And because of some of those things that we talked about earlier, such as privacy, individual agency, and those sorts of things, I think that there will be a huge perpetual demand for, locally run LLMs, and those sorts of things. And so there will be entirely new markets created that we can't even comprehend yet. That is one thing that, I don't know if it's going to create new jobs, but absolutely we will see entirely new markets around some of these things. So I was on a walk just the other day, and I was thinking about, I don't know if anyone has seen The Expanse, but they still have like cell phones in The Expanse, but they're just called terminals. And it's just a generic piece of hardware that'll connect to whatever local networks you have. It's not going to be run by, Google Fi or Verizon or whatever. It's just a device that is able to connect to, whatever local intranet or extranet networks are you have permissions to access. And of course, that far in the future, there'll also be AI enabled. So again, that's just an example of the kind of market for devices I think are going to be out there. And the Rabbit R1 is an early example as to how that might pan out. Good question though. Any other follow-up parts?
No, it's funny you brought up The Expanse, because I am kind of wondering if we if we're all kind of taking our spaceships out into space, like what actually keeps us together as a civilization. Because like I tend to think that proximity breeds empathy, where if you're close to people, then you care more about them, which I think is actually why our government doesn't really care about us, because they were always intended to be with us and not go to Washington that much. But if we're all sort of spread out, it feels like we move closer to The Expanse, where the Earth is a welfare state. Maybe there's Mars, sort of authoritarian, terraforming thing, and then you have workers exploited on the ring.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think early exploration will be, unfortunately, probably a lot like The Expanse, because the first Mars colonies are going to be entirely dependent on extra support from Earth. Like, there's just no other way around it, no engineering or scientific way. Like, we're going to have to be constantly sending, whether it's fuel or people or other supplies, technology, equipment. It's going to be a long time before Mars is completely self-sustaining. And likewise, to your point, as we start to branch out across, multiple planets, speciation will start to happen almost immediately. Because, just due to the evolutionary pressures of being on a different planet, whether it's, the local substances in the soil, the different gravity, the different amount of sunlight, a lot of humans will die. But the people that survive are going to be better suited to life on Mars. And you do that over a long enough period of time, they're going to be a different species. And we're going to repeat that ad infinitum. And so, like, I was actually thinking, like, Star Wars and Star Trek, just that's what it's going to be like, where there's going to be blue people and green people and scaly people. And but it's like we'll all have started from the same planet, but we're gonna speciate and diverge over the long haul. Now, because of the speed that we're going to spread out, I think people will be mostly human-like, because it's like, okay, if we're on 1,000 different planets 1,000 years from now, we're all still going to be mostly human. But I mean, like 10,000 years from now, we're going to have things that are no longer recognizable as, you know, Homo sapiens. Like there will be people that cannot go back home to Earth because whatever they have adapted to, whether it's life in deep space or life on a different planet, they'll not be able to live on Earth anymore. Just like in The Expanse, the belters, that gravity would kill them. That is, I think, a very obviously it's fiction, but I think that it is a salient thing to think about in terms of how evolutionary pressures will affect humans moving forward. So, anyways, that was
Awesome.
a good
Thanks.
question. Yeah, man. Hooey. All right, I am out of steam, so I will call it a day. Thanks everyone for jumping in and asking the great questions. I think this was probably the biggest webinar we've had. And obviously there's still 30 questions in the queue, so lots and lots of good questions. But yeah, I'll post this, and there's this video will go up later today unless I forget. It does take a while to upload these. And then there's a few PDFs that'll be attached with all the data, so you can take a look at it for yourself. But yeah, thanks everyone for jumping in, and have a good weekend. Enjoy. Cheers.